All right, everybody, welcome to Virtual Bourbon. My name is Steve Akeley. We've got a great event tonight. We're going to be doing some sensory training with Lia Niskanen, and she is coming to us once again with her educational approach to whiskey and also kind of a fun approach as well. So I think Lia does a great job. I'm going to be here the whole time, of course. I'm kind of her backup, helping her out, but for the most part, Lia will be leading this. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to Lia. Hey, Lia.
Hey, hi guys, how are you? I've met many of you before on the last meeting we did. Nice to see most of you again. This session I hope is going to be really fun, and I want you guys to sort of get a little silly with me tonight because that's totally necessary when it comes to nosing. So I'm going to just start off this event with asking you, and guys, don't look on your phones, just use your own imagination. How many breaths do you think we take a day?
How many breaths? Ooh.
I mean, just it's an interesting kind of thing. I mean, I didn't know or look into this until I started looking into nosing whiskey, but just off the top of your head or nose, how many breaths do you think we might take a day?
All right, first one is Mr. Bill, 30.
Anybody? 30,000. That's a great estimation because it's about 23,000 breaths a day.
Okay.
Right. So every time we breathe is an opportunity to smell. But I think that we've sort of forgotten our sense of smell because we're so bombarded with visual stimulation these days and audio stimulation these days. And I feel like in a way, our sense of smell has kind of been forgotten. And we don't ever walk down the street going, oh, I'm smelling this, I'm smelling this, I'm smelling this, but more we're seeing things. So I want to bring us into a world where we can make a smellscape and realize how important smelling and nosing is to especially for those of us that love whiskey. I spent a lot of time with whiskey blenders, and they have really dedicated protocols for how they smell things. But I think, the biggest question that I ever have had as a person that's out there in the public world as a whiskey educator is, I don't really know how to smell, or I don't really know how to zero in on what I'm smelling. And the only difference between a novice, and I'm sure you guys, you're way beyond novices, but the only difference between someone that doesn't really smell whiskey a lot and someone that smells things a lot is practice. So it's practice and it's cognitive. So I'm going to teach you guys a lot of things that are things that I've learned from working in distilleries and working with blenders. So if you think about your nose, right, it's and your olfactory system, it's actually more advanced than the airflow going over the wing of an aircraft. It's that involved and it's that advanced. Our sense of smell kept us out of trouble. The very first thing that singular cell organisms ever learned was how to delineate between what's poison or good. Is it food? Is it food and good, or is it poison and go away? So our animal brethren and our when we first started as humans, the first sense of smell that we kind of evolved was a sense of smell, because we want to go, hey, is this a friend or a foe? Is it chemical? Is it poison? Or is it food and good? That's where it started out. And that sense literally it was the first tissue in our brain. So when I say that, I mean that our olfactory system is really important And it's so important because it's actually a part of our brain. So, big eye opener for me, the olfactory system and the olfactory bulb is like this little almond shaped bulb at the back of your brain, which is directly attached to where you feel and experience emotion and where you have memory. So it's a part of our brains. What I'm trying to tell you is it's really important. And nobody ever kind of made exploration into researching it until very, very recently. There's a lot of false information about it. But really, you have to picture your brain. There's if you breathe in through your nose, it goes directly to a place in your brain called the olfactory bulb. And then that is directly associated with your limbic system, the system that processes memory and emotion. And that's what was first kind of developed out of our ancient caveman past. So when we were cavemen, we had to develop systems for smelling things and going, oh, is that person, dangerous or welcome? It's just like animals, and animals still do that today. And single cell organisms still share that one process with us, but we've developed that process so much that we can now move into the realm where we can make so many connections with it. But if you actually look at a diagram of the human brain, you will see that the olfactory bulb and the olfactory system, there's a thin line that goes right out of your nose into the back and central part of your brain, which is connected with the limbic system, which is connected with memory. Our sense of taste and sight is not connected so directly with our brain. Wow, that's amazing when we think about how we're smelling and tasting whiskey. So that's why when we taste whiskey, when we smell whiskey, or at least if you're like me, you think about, you immediately connect it with something that you're remembering. So I hope to lead you through something, through a tasting tonight. It's gonna sort of arouse that and think about how whiskey blenders and also perfumers do that. And you guys are so advanced already. I know you guys are advanced as a group, but I want, let's crack the first tasting. And I'm gonna lead you guys through a way to think about this, which I hope will help us to sort of think like a blender or a distiller does. Because one of the biggest questions I get from people when I do tastings is, I don't really know what I'm tasting or what I'm smelling. I don't know what I'm smelling. I'm not an expert. The only reason for that is because you don't do it every single day with a lot of samples in front of you. And as a perfumer or a blender would, a blender such as, and crack your first whiskey, guys, a blender, for instance, the blender that I worked with for many years, Ryan Kuchta, Kings County Distillery, may have had, 30, 40, 50 samples in front of him on any given day, right? It's not because he has a more developed or heightened sense of smell than we do. It's just that he does it more than we do. And we don't focus on our sense of smell anymore. We just don't. It's become kind of those sort of sense that we don't pay a lot of attention to. But if you pay a lot of attention to it and you have a lot of awareness and you're focusing on that part of your sensory life, then it's going to open up so many things for you. So let's, if you've cracked your first whiskey, have some fun stuff for you to kind of think about, and we're going to go through that. So the first one, we're going to talk about the way, and guys, again, I know you guys are all experts in the way that you taste and everything, but I want to talk about acclimation.
Hey, Leah, which one is the first?
That's going to be your Garrison brothers.
Okay, thank you.
So remember again, our ancient brethren, the way that they, the way that our brains developed, again, it was the first thing that developed in our brain was a sense of smell, because it was like approach or avoid. Is this poison or is it food? We're very, very basic back in the early days of our evolution. And that's fun to think about when we're nosing and tasting whiskey at kind of an advanced level. So the first thing I want you to do, and our first challenge, right, is very simple one. So take your glass, and I hope you guys all have poured your sample into your glass, right? With me? So one of the biggest mistakes that you can make when you're tasting, especially when you're judging a competition or you're doing it in a serious way, you want to, maybe you're a journalist, you want to talk about the notes that you are writing. You don't want to dive in there fast. Remember, this is high proof spirit. So the best advice I could give to anyone, if they really want to get your olfactory system working, is to hold it here under your nose first. So instead of diving in, hold it up to your mouth, right? And just breathe a little bit in through your nose. It smells beautiful. Don't dive in so fast. It's not wine. It's not 14% alcohol. This is in many cases 40% or more. So acclimation is very important with whiskey where your brain is concerned. If you dive in right away and sniff it, and don't do that right now, you're literally singeing the olfactory bulb and giving it the message that all it's smelling is alcohol and it's getting burned. So just relax a little bit and draw it up to your mouth level, not your nose, but your mouth, and getting a lot of beautiful scents just from holding it here, right? And then tip the glass from the front of the rim to the back when you smell and don't taste yet. It's really nice. And then you breathe out again. If you always breathe out, it's really important to do that. That's the first thing that any whiskey blender or distiller will do, is just acclimate yourself. Let's just do it again. I really like doing that because it doesn't put any pressure on you, and you just have to kind of acclimate your nose to what you've smelled. So at nose level or mouth level, already at mouth level, I'm getting like, overripe apple, maybe some pear. It's really interesting that way, right? Before you put your nose in it. And we're not wine tasters, we're trying to learn about whiskey. So again, acclimation. It's a big deal for whiskey tasters. Breathe in, breathe out, and then move your nose again from the front of the rim to the back. I don't know about you, but on the back end of that, instead of kind of overripe pear, I've got a yeasty, almost dusty note. I don't know about you guys, but how did that work for you? And we're not even into the real nosing of it yet, but that's how blenders and do it. Comments? So, I mean, it's really, all this is very, very a part of who you are when you are who you are. And that's the other great thing about whiskey, because who you are chemically and what your makeup is right now is very, very different than how you might approach this whiskey a week ago, a month ago, or many years ago. So you could have had a great bottle of whiskey in your bar, and then you taste it again many years later, and you're like, oh, this tastes so different. It's not the way I thought it would be. That's because your DNA is mixing with the whiskey, right? So I want you guys to, if you could, write down what you just experienced, just by holding it up to your nose and not really diving in yet. I'm going to do it again. If you guys want to do it, I'll do it again too. It's really, really, really instructive. Oh, to just acclimate a bit. I think one of the biggest problems that people have with whiskey nosing is that they dive in too fast and they don't give their brain the time to process the information. So hold it up again to your mouth level and breathe in through your nose and mouth this time. Really different, and not even like holding it up right to my nose yet. I got a lot of tannins on when I tipped the glass up. So really interesting to think about, right? So I'm curious if you guys want to comment on just that experience of holding it up just to your mouth level before you dive in to the nosing. It's important because it sets our body to appreciate and accept the high alcohol content. It's really, really important when you're nosing whiskey. Anyone have notes? Yeah. Definitely got the yeast, cinnamon toast crunch, really nice, baked apples, brown sugar, nutmeg, and oak. Fresh fruit on the dough before you put it in the oven. I love that one. That's amazing. It's really nice. So again, you have to remember that this is our olfactory system is, primitive, but it's also advanced. We can smell and advanced noses, as they call them in the perfume industry, can smell upwards of about 100,000 scents out of anything they smell. It's no joke. I mean, they can really do that with practice. And the normal or average person like you and I can smell 10 to 40,000 scents out of everything we smell. It all has to do with practice. So again and again, I have to say this to people that I taste with, and I love whiskey. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about it. You've got to get yourself back in the habit. It's a habit that maybe we never formed, which is smelling things every day. When the minute you leave your house, the minute you walk out your door, kind of make a mental record of everything you're smelling. That's what whiskey blenders and whiskey distillers and experts and perfumers do. They have this catalog of remembered scents. So they have all this information to go on when they finally approach that beautiful glass of whiskey or wine. And it all emerged from our survival. And if you look at I'll try and do a little share here. If you look at a host disabled screen sharing, Steve,
do you need? Yeah,
I just want to share a quick kind of map of our brain so that people can see how our olfactory bulb is directly connected with our brain and our limbic system.
You should be good now.
All right, let's see if we can bring this up. Well, that's not working.
Down, it's at the bottom in the middle. Is that what you're using, Leah? All the way at the very bottom in the middle, it says share screen. That's the one you need to use.
No, I know it's not working now, but sorry. So anyway, wanna there. Anyway, so that didn't work. But if you can picture your limbic system, there's a channel that goes right through your olfactory system, which connects with a place in your brain, which is the limbic system, which is directly connected with your memory. And that's why when we smell things, it's so much more vivid than when we see something. So you have to sort of open your mind to the way things smell. And I think we're sort of a little bit prohibited in our lives from learning how to smell those things. So let's do another test and move to the second whiskey. And I'm going to teach you a little bit more about how you can connect those things that you're processing directly with your brain, right?
Evan put up a thing there. I don't know if you can click on that. It's in the chat. Opens it up. It may have been a graphic like you were. Let's see here. I don't know if... Hold on, I can share it with the group. That was there something similar?
Oh, that's the one I had. Yeah. That's the one that I had wanted to bring up. Actually, great. Thank you. You're reading my mind. You're reading my limbic system, Steve.
That was Evan. I have to give Evan Van School credit.
Yeah. So your olfactory bulb is this little almond-shaped piece of tissue that's directly connected with your brain. And your nasal cavity and your olfactory system connects with that and connects with the place in your mind that processes memory and emotion. So with that, thank you, Steve.
Okay.
I think we're getting on a roll here because you're reading my mind. I want to talk with you next about what smells remind you of. And this is a really important thing. So I want you guys, let's get silly because it's important to get a little bit silly and go a little bit out of the box when we talk about these things. Perfumers and master blenders all have this thing which is called sharp focus and soft focus. And that's also something that is shared, believe it or not, by homicide detectives and master blenders and perfumers. And that's an interesting one, right? So I'm just going to posit this to you. So bring up your next whiskey and save that and save your notes.
Which one's that? We don't have any
We're
sort
going
of order.
we're going on to number 2.
Which is
our number 2 is our beautiful Lou St. Clair.
Gotcha. The Lee W. Sinclair. Okay.
Yeah, that's from French Lick. So we just did something where we learned how to acclimate our body, and that's very important. So 1, acclimate your body to the scent of the high proof alcohol. Whenever you do this, believe me, if you're at home and sitting around and you have to hold yourself back from bringing the whiskey right to your nose, if you could just bring it up slowly, hold it under your mouth for a minute and do what we just did, and smell it. It's beautiful. And then you smell it and you tip the glass. Now let's have a little bit more fun and talk about not focusing so hard, but doing soft focus. So soft focus, as I said, is something that's done by homicide detectives and detectives who are doing forensics and stuff like that. So if you're going to a crime scene and what the first thing you want to do, obviously, is put all your focus on all the details. Boom. And they're very, very good at that. But then the way that they actually help themselves solve the crime is that they do a soft focus. So they focus very hard at first, and then they go back and they do what's called a soft focus, where you just take a deep breath. You don't think about anything you just thought, and you're looking at the same thing, or you're smelling the same thing, and just letting your mind relax. And that's how you do a soft focus. So let's try that with our beautiful second whiskey, and do all the things we thought about first. So bring it up slowly. Believe me, this is gonna, hopefully it'll change your game when it comes to whiskey tasting. Bring it up slowly to your mouth level. But don't focus so hard this time. Let's have some fun and just let our minds go. I mean, maybe the first time you thought of something very specific. Now we want to just do a soft focus on the smell alone. And you obviously sip as well, but it's really different for me. I mean, I got like, I don't want to tell you because it's very subjective, but did anyone get something different when they were sort of letting their mind go on that one, not focusing so hard on the flavor wheel? Let's try it again. I think we're so kind of focused on the smell of whiskey that we're not used to letting our minds go soft. When you let your vision and smell go soft and you're letting yourself go, if you smelled something that time and you don't know how to verbalize it, think of what it reminds you of. And there might be a number of things that soft focus reminds you of. We'll do that again. See, I mean, I got a whole bunch of stuff when I was doing the soft focus that didn't come in when I was doing the hard focus. Does anyone want to share? I mean, this is what blenders do. It's a great practice. And yeah.
When you were talking about that soft focus and did it bring anything up? It was weird. It was like almost, it just took me back to when I was a kid in the candy aisle at low-cost drugstore. I'd ride my bike there.
I love that. Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's what soft focus does. It kind of releases your mind from the pressure of focusing. So basically, when you bring the whiskey to your mouth, acclimate, then focus, and then lose the focus and do a soft focus. So just let your mind wander. This particular whiskey, I think, is beautiful for that. So does anyone have any other notes?
I picked up a vanilla. The memory that went with it was my mother making, from scratch chocolate chip cookies, and the vanilla that poured in. It was very much that same sort of sweet vanilla smell that came to me. Exactly.
So if you were a perfumer or a blender, then you would go, I'm smelling sweet. And then you're in this flavor camp, right? So you've entered the flavor camp and your nose is accepting it. And you have this camp of fragrances. And then you have to ask yourself, if it's sweet, what kind of sweet? Is it vanilla sweet? Is it candy sweet? Is it toffee? Is it, some kind of drink that we had as a kid? You can break that down. So if what you have is never, if it's not right on the tip of your tongue, it will be if you consider things that are like it. And that's the way chemicals work. Chemicals have kind of doppelgangers a lot of times. There are chemicals that have two sides of the same chemical, where one side is maybe smells like spearmint, the other smells like tobacco. So you have to really give your mind a chance to process this stuff. And that's what's great about being who we are, because we can really delve into it now, and get so much more into it. Believe me when I tell you, our sense of taste is so much less advanced. We can taste sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and some would say umami, which is a fifth. It's very kind of basic, but with our olfactory system, again, which is directly connected with our memory and our emotion, we can detect thousands and thousands of things, but it just takes practice. It takes practice, and it takes, just sitting down and kind of doing it every day. Which I think is really interesting. So I'm going to, I want to also talk to you about something kind of interesting called retronasal breathing. So I talked about, it's also fun. I love this. It's taught me so much. So we talked about doing, holding when you first approach it. Like, you don't approach it too fast, right? You want to hold it right into your mouth and breathe in, and then go to your nosing. And I learned this the hard way, guys, by nosing a new make spirit. It was actually a new make, the heads of a new make spirit that Colin Spillman had made on a little hobby still when I worked for the distillery, and he was doing a project. So he said, "Hey, Lia, do you want to smell this new make agave?" And I didn't know it was the heads, and I sort of immediately put it up to my nose, and it was like the nuclear bomb clouds. It's literally just every part of my nose and head just exploded in pain and burning, and it went up into this big cloud. You don't want that when you're tasting whiskey. That's an extreme. But the reason that I'm telling you to just hold it at mouth level, I think, is really important, because I think we all dive in too fast, and you have these very sensitive dendrites in your nose, and your nasal passage, and it's called trigeminal stimulation. Again, really nerdy, right? But you can also feel with your nose. You don't just smell with your nose, you feel with your nose. And that's why when you're chopping an onion and your ears and your eyes tear up and you're crying, it's because your trigeminal, the little dendrites in your nose are feeling that burn, and they're feeling the kind of pain of that. And that's why we want to always, 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 when you're tasting, do the thing of holding it to your mouth and breathing in first. And even when I go back to the whiskey that we just had, and I'm doing it again here, breathing in through my nose, it's like lighter and better. So protect your nose and protect your olfactory buds when you taste. Right. So how does everyone, any other notes about that one?
You had a couple like hayride and garden.
Yeah.
And then Evan was doing a bunch. He's doing cherry Dr. Pepper, walking into an ice cream parlor, and Honey Nut Cheerios. So
right. So I want you to take that story a little bit further and get even sillier on our next test, right? So pour your number 3, and obviously we can go back and forth, right?
And what is number 3?
The Breckenridge.
Number 3 is the Brackenridge. So we've learned how to acclimate. We've learned how to think about these things and to sort of aerate our sense. But now I want you to talk about how the chemistry of the whiskey changes in your perception when water is added. So I asked everyone to bring a little bit of water. It could be a bottle of water, and don't flood it with water. It'd be good if everyone just held up their glass so we can see what kind of glass they're using. Steve, much like me, and the legend, very cool. And that's also another thing that a factor that comes into it. But let's talk about congeners and the role that they play, and proof, right? So if you buy a bottle of cask strength bourbon, you're actually getting a much better value than you would if you buy something at the regular 80 proof, because you're hopefully going to dilute that down to what's normal for your body. And that's what I always do. And that's why I love cask strength bourbon, because it's a better value. So you're going to dilute that bourbon down at cask strength, and it's going to do something important for your taste, which is it's going to open up those congeners. Congeners bind to alcohol, and when you add water, just a little bit, don't be serious. You don't have to dump a whole bunch of water into your glass, but you just drop a little bit of water into your glass. Those congeners are going to bind with the water, and it's going to reform, and it's like a tight little bud of a rose going, and you're going to be able to taste a little bit more. So let's go more into the tasting of it now. And you can swirl it around. You can also do the nosing. But with water, it's even different, right? And consider that. So what that's doing is kind of telling you a deeper story about the way that whiskey was fermented, what it was fermented with, how it was fermented in the tank, what kind of yeast was used, because all those congeners blossom in the fermentation. So those become more kind of boop, boop, boop to your nose when you're nosing and tasting a whiskey. Yeah, get that? It's really interesting kind of to think about. I mean, it's just really interesting to add water to whiskey because it brings so much more to your nose. And again, your sense of smell and your palate are connected, but your sense of smell, again, is directly connected with your brain. It just is, guys. And we can, I mean, I've had this experience many, many times. The minute I smell a beautiful whiskey, it's like a form of travel. Like, oh, that reminds me of sitting by the beach, campfire, wind blowing in my face, whatever it is for you, it's connecting with your brain. So the reason that I'm saying that to you is that because sensory tasting notes are very individual to who you are, and you should never, ever, ever think that your tasting notes aren't on par with the best in the business, like Dave Broom, Lou Bryson, Robin Robinson. The only reason it's different is because they do it a lot and they do it every day. It's just like any other hobby you could think of. We just don't use our noses enough. And literally that's a big game changer as far as I'm concerned. And I hope that you'll all realize that as well. I mean, again, initially, it was very basic and had to do with approach avoid? Is this a bad food? Is it a poison? Is this a good partner? Is it a bad partner? It helped us to determine and procreate, it helped us to determine social hierarchies at one point, and single cell organisms still have that basic function, but we are able to kind of take that to a new level. So I think that's really fun to think about. Did anyone want to pipe up on how that last tasting worked for you with water?
Evan's got a pretty good one there because he went in, without water, creamy, viscous, port really shined through and it coated the mouth. And they said with the water, brought out citrus fruit, a bit of spice, but not peppery and lemon drop.
Great. That's wonderful.
Some big changes there, obviously.
Big changes and big chemical changes because of the way those congeners that came from the fermentation are traveling into your olfactory system and to your limbic system through that process. So great, guys. So I want you, let's just get a little bit stupid and ridiculous right now. Steve, I remember distinctly one of the things that I loved most about attending one of your tastings the first time was that one of your guests said that whiskey tasted pointy. I really loved that. And I think it was on one of Wes Hardin's tastings. And I really love that because we have to also, one of the things that blenders and perfumers do is they think about things out of the box.
Right.
So let's stop thinking about the way that we're smelling things just for a minute. We've done the hard focus, the soft focus. Now let's just let it go and be creative and talk about how those things feel on our noses. So we could move to the next one.
Okay. That's going to be your few spirits.
Yes. And while we do this, I'll tell you another story about cultural context. So when you're opening up your few whiskey, let's think about something. And while we're going along, guys, always, remember, hold the glass under your nose as we're going along. Do everything we're doing. Hold the glass under your nose, but at your mouth level. Breathe in through your nose and mouth. Taste it. But now I want you to think about something other than soft focus and just random association. So colors, shapes, really wacky stuff. Like, how does it feel? How does it look? If you just tasted that and you were somebody evaluating a perfume, how would you evaluate that perfume just in terms of color or feeling? Let rip. Just let it rip. I love really unusual tasting notes because there's no way for any one of us to taste the right thing all the time. So let's just kind of get into it.
I get like cherry blossom perfume like my grandma used to wear.
Awesome. So the cherry blossom perfume, do you know where she got that from?
I think just like Bed Bath and Beyond.
Okay.
Reminds me of that.
That's really a great comment because that's so interesting because scents are chemicals, right? And the scent of a rose has literally thousands of molecules in it. Thousands. When you lean over to smell a rose, it has thousands of molecules in it. But the commercial scent that they use in rose hand hand moisturizer, there's only one. So it's very, very interesting to think about when you think about that. Everything we smell are chemicals. We're generalists as a species, which is kind of cool, just to go off the record a little bit. We're generalists because we're not like specialists. So specialists are pandas. That's a good example. Pandas can only smell bamboo, and they're hardwired to do that. That's their only food, and that's all they smell. So for them to have a more developed sense of smell would be really dangerous. But for us, we can exploit almost any habitat. So can you guys guess what other creatures exploit, are generalists and besides humans, and can exploit any habitat? It's fun to think about, right?
Exploit any.
Beavers tend to reshape their environments.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of just being able to exploit any habitat at all for food and survival.
Koala.
Cockroach.
Cockroach, yes. So humans, cockroaches.
I would think
And-
any scavengers would do that, right? Because scavengers do that stuff.
You're getting closer.
I was going to say dogs.
Closer. I mean, not closer, but it's interesting to think about. They're distinctly different species. We're a generalist species. So humans, cockroaches, and there's one other species that can exploit just about any other habitat they need to survive. And they don't need to focus on one thing.
A rat?
Yes, yeah.
Rat.
So-
yeah.
Yay, humans, cockroaches, and rats. We all have something in
They
common.
also enjoy kitchens in Paris as well.
Yes, and in New York City as well. So so we have noted already that we need to acclimate our bodies to this high proof spirit. We need to approach it with care. It's not wine. It's not 14%. The high proof does require that we allow our body to kind of get into that space where we can appreciate it. For our next one, let's crack our next one. I want to talk about the power of our memory, and then we're going to wrap up. I love this. Really interesting stuff, right? So when our ancient brains were formed, they were literally formed, as I said before, with a thought of just approach or go away. So is it poison? Is it food? Is it good? Is it bad? Are you my mate, or don't want you? It's all very basic at first, but then we've developed this amazing sense. And that's beautiful. So now what I want you to do is just tell stories. Tell stories about what it makes you think about, because this will get your brain activated. I know it's sort of intimidating, but I have studied people that have nosed and tasted whiskey for a long time. They just have to tell stories about it. Like, what does that make you think of? Where are you when you're nosing that whiskey without even tasting it? Let's go to our fourth and just open up and tell a little story about that. It's good for you. This is how we become master tasters and master nosers and master blenders, by getting in touch with the part of our brain that's so important to us, which is our memory and our olfactory bulb.
So someone just said Halloween. I think that that really reminds me of, it's like right after you come back from getting all of your candies and you're
Awesome.
emptying out your bag, and you just have that variety of, you got chocolates mixed in there, you've got all different types of candies.
Oh,
And
it's really cool.
a combination of those.
Yeah, I wrote that. I thought it was more like a combination of the caramel apples, the candies, the smell of the leaves, the moist leaves starting to rot in the fall. And
Yeah. Oh, I love these. That's great. You guys should remember these stories, write them down, because every time you taste whiskey, you should remember these things, because it's only going to further and advance what you're smelling and tasting. That's such a cool story. So while you guys are thinking about that, I wanted to talk about burning leaves. So I'm 60 years old and I grew up in the East Coast. So when I grew up, I love the smell of burning leaves in the autumn. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that, but when we burn leaves in the fall, it was one of my favorite smells in the world. It was just so incredible because it meant risk and excitement and the change of the season, and just evoked so many great things. But now burning leaves is illegal in the United States because it's been determined that it has a lot of pollutants in it. So I'm curious to know if children in the future will ever know what that smell is. And if they do know what that smell is, they might think it's bad because they've learned that it's, bad to breathe. So nowadays, instead, we have leaf blowers and that sort of leftover gas smell from leaf blowers. But it's just an example of how smells are also cultural. So depending on where you grew up, and if you were used to certain smells or cardamom or cinnamon or pepper, or whatever your mother cooked with, it's also cultural and contextual when you smell something. So, I do tastings with people from all around the world, and they don't necessarily recognize smells that we would from bourbon directly because they didn't grow up with those things. It's kind of interesting to think about, right? Also, wintergreen. Wintergreen is one of the most popular smells in America. We associate with fun and candy, just freshness. But British people don't like it because they associate with analgesics that were put on people in World War II. So even their children kind of go, oh, that's medicine, it's bad, we don't really like that. So it's interesting to think about whiskey tasting in that cultural context as well. Right?
Yeah. Reminds me of my grandma always had Bengay on her knees and stuff like that when she was older. So you go in her house, she always kept the heat like 85. Between that and all that Bengay, it would sting your eyes when you went in there.
Right.
And yeah, so that definitely takes me back to that when you get
exactly. So again, guys, the focus of my experience with you guys is just to always remember when you're drinking whiskey that it's a direct contact with your memory. It's so beautiful. Steve, I know you don't like Scotch, but I love a single malt Scotch called Cool Ila. My cultural background is Scottish and Finnish, and I love Cool Ila because it just reminds me of bonfires on the beach and seaweed and kind of all these things that I smoke maybe grilled pear and things like that. I don't even know where that's coming from, but it reminds me of that because I know it's part of my culture. So we have to also take that into account. So smelling is much more important than we thought it might be. I urge you guys to do a little experiment before we're done here. I'm not done yet, but do a little experiment. I've been doing this every day now. It's so much fun. And I live in New York City, so my smells are going to be really different than yours. But from the minute you wake up, and by the way, guys, when you're sleeping, your sense of smell also goes to sleep. You cannot smell in your sleep, right? It shuts down, your vision shuts down, but also your smell shuts down. So when they say, wake up and smell the coffee, it's literally in that order. You're waking up and you're smelling the coffees. Your smell has gone to sleep at night. When you wake up in the morning, just on any normal day that you're doing moving forward, think about it. When you walk out of the house, oh my God, there's so many smells. Smell everything. Smell everything and think about it. I know I've said this before on my last Zoom with you guys, but I said I live in a 6-story apartment building in New York City. So when I walk down, and I don't take the elevator because I don't trust it, but I walk down, when I walk down, it's like a whole different worlds on every floor. The minute you go out the door, it's all different. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. It's a smellscape. It's a whole world that we're not really attuned to. And I think you guys can agree with me. It's just not something we're very used to thinking about anymore. But that's what makes us better whiskey tasters and better whiskey enthusiasts, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Curious if anyone has a something they smelled today that they thought was unusual or weird in their normal travels.
I cut grass today, so
yeah,
everything is jacked up for me. I put gas in my van, and
right.
Most of these that I'm smelling, I'm tasting them, but I'm not smelling them very much because
right.
Everything smells like gasoline.
There you go. Well, again, that's another. I'm glad you said that because that's what is leading me to something else that I want to talk about, which is what the blender does to prepare. So I worked with Kings County Distillery for many years and worked with a blender called Ryan Kuchta. So Ryan, when he does a blend, literally, no joke, he, for a week before he does a blend, he doesn't eat anything spicy. He doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't surround himself with anybody that's wearing any perfume. He eats nothing, but he literally goes on a prison diet, what he calls a prison diet, which is bread and toast and water. And that sounds a little extreme, but when you think about it, what we're doing now is really lovely and contemplative, but what he's doing is a job where he has to analyze maybe hundreds of samples when he goes into work. So he pulls from barrels, he takes a stave and he pulls whiskey from barrels, and he may have 30, 40, 50 glasses of whiskey sitting in front of him and his assistant. So he doesn't kind of have the luxury of mulling over that, but it's because he thought about this a lot that he is where he is. So he has his glasses, and he has done his prison diet, quote unquote prison diet. And he has to go through 30, 40, 50 glasses of whiskey because he's not just trying to pull out a scent from one dram. He's trying to think into the future about how one scent might marry with another scent in another barrel moving forward as a perfumer would. So it's really involved. And I always asked Ryan, how the heck do you do that? I mean, he said it's all nose, right? We used to joke about that on tours at Kings County Distillery because they would say, doesn't your master blender get drunk? Well, no, because it's all here. And he has done it so much and he thinks about it differently. And that's the only difference. He's learned to think about scents differently. He's learned to categorize them. So he already has a vocabulary, right? So we've talked about a vocabulary of whiskey tasting. And I urge all of you, and I know you guys are all super advanced in your knowledge of whiskey and bourbon. But what I always like to do is look at whiskey wheels, bourbon wheels, whiskey wheels, Scotch wheels online, like type them in and kind of look at them and look at the inner circle, which is going to be your basic smells, right? So, and you can keep sipping and drinking, guys. I don't want to stop you from sipping. But in the inner circle of any bourbon or whiskey wheel is going to be the basic, what Dave Broom calls a flavor camp. It's sweet, is it herbaceous, is it oaky, is it woody, is it dry, is it, floral, is it fruity, right? So anytime you drink a whiskey, what whiskey are we on? Are we on 4 now, Steve? Just keep me online here because I know I could talk all night about this stuff. So
we've gone 4 and we've done 5 out there too. So everything's kind of out there at this point. So
awesome. So at the end of the day, we always want to think about the inner circle. We want to think about the inner circle of those things that I just talked about. If it's one of those things, if you think, let's just say we started out from the beginning and you guys had never talked to me and you pull the glass up to your nose and you pull it up just to your mouth level and breathed in, right? Awesome, Steve. Thank you.
It's a good from
I'm getting better at this. Thank you. And then you just said, well, and you can take that off.
Okay.
So I can see everybody. But if you can get to that one thing when you just do your base note and you ask yourself and you give yourself a little bit of time to mull it over, don't accept that as base. Don't say, oh, it's just fruity. Well, what kind of fruit? Is it citrus? Is it plum? Is it dried fruit? Is it banana? If it's banana, is it unripe banana? Is it overripe banana? Is it cooked banana? Is it burnt banana? Just dive in a little bit deeper and then you get to the outer ring, right? And when you get to the outer ring, then you can ask yourself about the larger things in your memory. So it's really cool. It's all about a vocabulary. And again, smelling a little skunk. A skunk, actually, none of us like skunk, but skunk actually has some of the same exact chemical notes in it as coffee beans. So people from other countries might not think skunk smells or stinks. When they come here, I mean, Scandinavians, they might come here and go, oh, skunk, it doesn't smell bad. It reminds us of something else. It's all about your cultural context, how you grew up, what your background is and what your individual DNA is. But also remember, guys, at the end of the day, your tasting notes are yours, and they're very important to who you are. And nobody should ever be able to tell you that those tasting notes aren't right. There's no wrong answer when it comes to tasting notes. And just as another kind of addition to our conversation, our chemical makeup, who we are in the moment, is also reacting with how that whiskey is affecting our olfactory system and our memory. So I know we've all had experiences with whiskey where you might have tasted something you really liked. You're like, oh my God, I love this whiskey. I bought it. I went to a tasting. It was magnificent. You get it home and you're like, well, it's not the way I remembered it. That's not because the whiskey changed. It's because you changed and your DNA and your chemistry changed. So that's why the study of whiskey is so amazing, because it's so connected with your DNA and the process of the way the whiskey was made and the way that you're processing it in your memory and your emotion, which are not connected with taste. So much more advanced than our sense of taste. So smell, guys, smell everything. Even if it's bad when you go outside, do me a favor. When we meet again, I would love to hear just one day of a diary of everything you smelled. I think you'll be amazed. It's only going to advance your whiskey tasting, because whiskey is a process of age and time. So.
Yeah, I feel like, the people that are best at this, Lia, have that unique ability. One thing that I like to do that has nothing to do with taste here, but it is use of your senses in different ways. And I like to go to the symphony, and you hear that beautiful music. We got a great orchestra. We have Powell Hall, which is acoustically an amazing building. And you're talking about an orchestra between 75 and 100 pieces. And what I love to do sometimes is, rather than just enjoying the music as a whole, to focus in on, I want to see this oboe player. Can I pick up that individual instrument, or this flautist? Can I hear that flute? And if you focus and you concentrate, you can, if you're in a great building with great acoustics. And it amazes me. It amazes me when you pick it up and you see that person playing, and you're in the audience, but then you can hear that specific instrument. And that's really the same type of thing you need to do here. As you take that drink, it tastes like whiskey. But what are those tastes that are making that up? And I think that's the key to work your way through there. And the good people that are really great at this can sometimes put into words things that you wouldn't necessarily do. And I always like to give my Jackie's Icahn example. She had a whole thing of whiskey and said, pick one out. So I picked one out. It was a 200 milliliter bottle. She poured herself a glass by herself. We taste it, and she's like, this tastes to me like apricots on in the back, being grilled on the backyard in an old time Weber grill. And then I taste that, and that's exactly what I tasted. To the word. But then you get some people who think that they're good at this, and they realize that they can say whatever they want, because there's no real wrong answer. It's your taste.
Exactly.
And I think you just throw out buzzwords and stuff, because I'm not getting those things. But when I'm with someone who really knows what they're doing, it's amazing. So that's something to point out too.
Yeah, of course. And I think the so-called experts throw out a lot of buzzwords, as you say, which intimidate people. But we should just constantly remember that it's our own DNA, our own perception of those smells, which is what's going on when we taste whiskey. And again, I keep having to drive this home, but guys, it's all about practice. There's really no difference. There's nothing, in my view, there's no such thing as a super taster or super noser. It's just that these people do it a lot, and they do it every day, and they think about it every day. It's just like if you were trying to become a concert pianist, you would do that every single day, and you would throw your whole life into it. But if you constantly train yourself how to smell, and just to be aware of it, it's not that hard to do. But It is and it isn't, I mean, again, when I told the story about walking out of my door and trying to remember what I smelled as a process, it's not that easy because we're not that used to it, because we are bombarded by all these other, especially visual bombardment in this day and age. But remember that smell is directly connected with our sense of emotion and our sense of memory. And very, very important to who we are as people, right? So it's good to sort of let it go and dive into those explorations and think about that when we can, right? Hope that's been lovely for you guys. Also remember, retro breathing is also a good thing. Retro nasal breathing is also good to try. So last thing I wanted to say is also, sorry, it's so smoky here in New York City. It's ridiculous from the fires out in the West. But if you have your whiskey and you do nose it, you always want to do that with your lips a little bit parted, right? To allow your palate to accept also the strength of the whiskey. I think that would be a game changer for you. So if you dive in, like I said, slowly, right? Raise it up to your mouth level, a little bit softly, just slowly. Teaches us to slow down. That's what I like about whiskey, right? Whiskey is meant to slow us down. It's nothing to be rushed over. If you draw it up to your mouth again, slowly breathe in through your mouth, and then slowly breathe in through your nose and mouth. Lovely. That connects your senses and your sense of memory. Right? I mean, Steve, I could go on forever. Frank Sinatra was actually the god of that. Like he perfected that retronasal and breathing through his mouth and his nose at the same time. They said that was how he became such an amazing singer and was able to emote so much. But many of you may not have been born after 1970s. Bad reference.
So do you want to open it up for questions here, Lia?
Yes,
before we
let's
let them
do
go?
that.
Let's see if there's any
That's a
questions
great-
out there. They've been
Yes.
through a whole seminar here. There may have been questions that they were thinking of. So feel free to open up your mics and ask away if you've got any questions for Lia. Anything you want to know. So either Dave or Adina is a saxophone player. We'll have to take advantage of that one night.
I am actually, and that's
Wow.
one thing they teach you when you're learning saxophone is circular breathing.
Awesome.
I mean, that's how you can actually, hold notes and
Right.
have enough oxygen to do your thing and play is
Yeah.
you do the circular breathing.
Why have we never had this on an event before?
Because
This
I
is
suck
natural.
right now. I haven't played it. Yeah.
All right, next time we get together, you've been warned. Next time we get together, you'll be playing.
No, but I mean, it's a similar concept to, I think, the breathing you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, certainly for vocalists and musicians, absolutely. They're all connected, guys. Lou Bryson, if you guys know about him, he always says that you should do when you get to the palate part, you should chew it around in your mouth and breathe in a little bit through pursed lips. But I can't do that. I always choke when I do that. But he says that's a great way of connecting your palate and your olfactory system.
I was just gonna say too, I just added a little water to the number 5
Backsetter.
Yeah.
backsetter. Oh my
Right.
gosh, did that really bring out some new smells and flavors?
Great. That's amazing. So what was different from the first to the when you dropped the water in it? Curious.
It got much creamier.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did the same thing in the, without the water, it was very, very peaty, very peat forward, but you got a lot of other flavors after you watered it down a little.
Do this, smell the bottle itself before it's opened up. Just, smell inside the bottle of that backsetter one, and it's total Band-Aid iodine kind of peaty smell, kind of the nasty peaty. But when it's opened up and it breathes a little bit, it gets a little bit nicer.
Huh. It's very interesting. Yeah,
That one's not for me. That one's not for me. I don't like that one.
No, not a fan of the
No, I mean, once they invented the other stuff, we don't need that kind anymore. They should get rid of scotch. We've invented better. Why do we keep with that stuff? It's bad. They've invented better now. Why do we still have that crap around? It's no good.
Amazing.
No, remind me never to give you any of my Octomore.
I don't want it. I don't even want it.
Often no.
It means nothing to me. No, I can't. I wouldn't even appreciate it. You'd have me try. I hate it.
But that one with oxygen is different.
Well, I'm new to the ABV crowd, but Steve, I'm really curious what your aversion to scotch is.
No, that whole thing, like it tastes like Band-Aids. I'm not really into Band-Aids, really.
Yeah,
it just tastes like I'm in the hospital.
Even
because that scent is so strong in the hospital, you can taste it. That's what this tastes like. This is the liquid version of being at the hospital. And I don't find it pleasant. I don't like it. I can't imagine how anybody does like it. And then some people even tell me, yeah, it tastes like Band-Aids, and you don't like it as you're drinking it, but then you crave it afterwards. I'm like, no, I'll never crave that. It's bad.
Walk out onto the lawn and lick the grass and dirt, and that's your scotch.
Go lick the asphalt, Steve. Yeah. It's really interesting to me. So anyone else not like scotch? Does anyone have a huge aversion to scotch like Steve?
We're a divided household.
Oh, hands raised. So why? Rebecca?
No.
Justine?
Same thing. Like I mean, I can't say that I have like a huge aversion to it because I've probably only tried a handful, and 1 out of 5 that I have tried, like I don't want to say I like it. Like I'm not gonna go buy a bottle, but if someone gave me a glass, like I could choke it down. But so yeah, I haven't been introduced to a good one that fits my palate yet.
Interesting. So what is it about bourbon in particular that you love so much versus scotch? Just curious.
To me, go ahead, Justine.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just the flavors are more, I guess,
familiar, probably.
Yeah, like they're more recognizable to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's good flavors, like flavors that I enjoy, I guess.
Of course. Yeah, it's what we grew up with, right? We're Americans, and we grew up with certain flavors that we love, and bourbon is a big, bold flavor, and Americans like big, bold flavors. The holy trinity is, bourbon, blues, and barbecue. I mean, how much better can you get than that?
Maybe bacon too.
And bacon, which is included in those.
Okay, that makes it right.
Yeah, bourbon, bacon, blues, and barbecue. Yeah. So that proves to me that it is cultural. It's what we love. It's what we're used to growing up and smelling. It's kind of cool. I keep referencing those burning leaf smells, but what we are familiar with is what we have to kind of open our minds to getting out of in terms of drinking whiskey in the bigger picture.
I mean, to some degree. But I do like I like, but not as much as bourbon. Bourbon to me is the best. But I will drink Irish whiskey, Canadian whiskey, and there's some very good ones in that. Scotch to me is always, it's one note. Now you could say, okay, well, this one's very peaty. This one's very, very, very smoky. I get it, but it seems like that's going to be your notes. Either you got a peaty one or you got a smoky one, or there's some that they'll be like, oh, there's one region that doesn't have either. Okay, well, why bother? I'll just I'll stick with the bourbon. I don't need to experiment around. I've already got what I like.
I'm going to try and use a cheat sheet to help Steve on this argument. We believe it is the high amount of phenols that are in scotches, and we prefer like the fruity esters, the lactones, and the aldehydes and vanillins that are in bourbons.
I just like the layer of flavors.
Breaking out the science on us.
The layering of flavors.
Well, it's all about the grain, right? So Scotch is mostly malted barley.
Yeah.
And guys, 90% of Scotch in the world is a blend. It's a blended whiskey. So we're not really used to those flavors. And we're not really used to malted barley and barley doesn't grow that well in the United States. It grows brilliantly in Scotland and Ireland. And we're just not used to it. So we don't maybe not necessarily like those flavors. But we love corn. And we love rye. And we love those big, oily, spicy flavors and rich and oily textures that come from that because of our culture. So it makes perfect sense. But it doesn't mean that you should explore other whiskeys. Steve, my goal as of tonight is to get you to like Scotch.
Well,
it was just won't happen. I mean, it's not like I haven't tried it.
For everyone here, it's my challenge for everyone here. I'm going to get Steve to like a Scotch. Make it on the record. I'll bring you a Scotch you'll like, Steve.
I had Steve try a Speyside that was sherry cask finished, and he really enjoyed it.
There you go.
So yeah.
If anyone can do it, it's Rick the Legend.
And then
he will find.
He gave me a case of it, so yeah.
Well, again, I still haven't heard why Rick is the legend. So.
Oh, he just is. You just got to hang out with him more. It'll all come to you.
No, I don't like real peaty scotches. I don't mind a smoky whiskey, or bourbon, but I don't really care for peat.
Yeah, I don't either. And again, somebody said Jason's is good. I get it. Kings County has a peated bourbon. I like that too. That's okay.
That was decent.
I'm not anti all this stuff. It's just Scotch. That's it. That's the note. If that's what you're looking for, there you go. Drink it.
Jason's peated barrel rye just doesn't taste peaty though.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a little bit of a smokiness to it. It doesn't taste peaty.
Well, that's because that was a barrel finish, and it wasn't
right.
Grain,
It wasn't smoked grains. It was a smoked barrel.
The barrel was smoked. Yeah.
Right. So it's different. And
it's phenomenal.
Right.
Well, I think Kings County Distillery peated bourbon would be a great gateway drug for you, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gateway, but it's a hard door.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not a hard door.
It's locked from the other side.
It's not. It's absolutely not. It's beautiful. It's handmade whiskey bourbon made on 4-size pot stills in Brooklyn with peated barley from Scotland. The mash bill is 80-20, very light. It's like the marriage of a great bourbon and slightly peated Scotch. So
Kings County does some good stuff.
Yeah. I'll throw in my 2 cents. I did the Kings County. I did the tour. I don't remember if you were there at the time. And I'm constantly trying to like peat and failing. And I didn't like the one from Kings County, but I did just find an Irish peated Connemara, which is, if you're looking for an entry into the world of peat, the Connemara is really nice.
Nice.
For
Yeah, I
Irish
love
peat.
I love Connemara. Yeah, it's really nice. Nice place. Nice weather. But also, guys, always remember that whiskey is so representative of where it comes from. And terroir is important in whiskey. And Steve told me about this place called Old 55 the other day. Steve, do you want to talk about that a little bit more? I'm really fascinated by what they're doing.
Yeah, Old 55 is a neat place because it's very unique. So Jason Fruits, who is the owner of that, he's got, he's, I don't know, fourth generation grain. The farmers before him, now they're just in the grain business. They actually lease out their farmland and people actually do the farming now. The family doesn't do that, but they deal in the commodity of selling grains. And, so he has an amazing thing. He has access to all these grains, and he just wants to be different. And he makes a hard heart's cut and literally, especially when you're talking about the one that he does with his sweet corn, which is a challenging and expensive grain to utilize. Again, he has the benefit of his family gets it, so he gets it for the cheapest cost of anybody out there. And he does a hearts of the hearts cut. He'll literally run a whole 600-gallon still and get 13 gallons out of it, which is that's a terrible yield, obviously.
Is he running off a pot still?
Yes. Yeah. So he runs off a pot still and
or hybrid.
Yeah, like a hybrid type of thing. And it's filled, packed with flavor. It's one of my favorite all-time whiskeys. So
amazing.
It's amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And now he sells it once a year. He does the barrel strength once a year. It's in the fall, so around the holidays. So if you're interested in that, check out Old 55 Distillery, November, December, in that area, and see if any's available. And it's gift shop only, and he doesn't ship, so you have to make friends out with people that are going to be going there. That's the key.
Like Steve and I.
Like the legend or I would be the ones to talk to. One of us will make a run on. Maybe we'll do it together. I don't know. But
Now, Steve, you like Lenny's hickory smoked, right?
I do. I do. I like light versions of all this kind of stuff. And again, I talked about I liked the peated Kings County. I like Jason's peated. So I'm not opposed against this stuff. But I also feel like those offer multiple layers. They're layers of taste and flavor. And I just feel like you're talking about a one note for the other ones, and it's overpowering. It's like, I don't know, onions are good, but when there can be overpowering with onions in certain
onions have layers
recipes and stuff like that. So
just the high phenol ones that
So folks, I think we have a challenge. I think we have a challenge to find scotches that Steve will actually like.
I'd be with you if they didn't invent bourbon. They've invented bourbon. I don't know why I have to take this retrograde step backwards. I'm past that.
The other good thing is that we can threaten him with Octomore. I like that. We can threaten him with that stuff.
I don't even know what that is, but yeah, the whole Scotch thing, and it's even more expensive. So it just sounds like a terrible idea to get into. I don't like it, and it's expensive. That's a bad combo.
Steve, I support your decision.
Thank you.
Yes. But I'm rising to the challenge. I will convince you, Steve.
I'm weird because I get what I like, and that's it. I don't dislike wine, but there's never a scenario where I would drink wine because, again, they invented bourbon. So once that got invented, the need for wine is kind of gone in my mind. You got bourbon,
right, Steve? He's already superior.
So I'm not a huge fan of. Again, as I drink wine, I'm like, this is okay. If I'm at a friend's house and that's what they're pouring, I'll drink it. But if I'm at a restaurant, there's just not a scenario where I'm like, I think I'll go for a wine here. I'm a bourbon guy, or American rye. I mean, I like American rye.
Steve, I was a lot like you, and that I thought, most Scotch was not worth trying out because it was smoky, peaty, and some of my earlier experiences, even with higher end stuff, it tasted like some nasty, dirty ashtray. But I'm starting to explore a little bit in Scotch, and I'm finding that there are some interesting flavors out there, and a much wider array than what I had thought before. Okay. And there's some that I actually like, and being primarily bourbon drinker.
Yay!
When I complete my bourbon journey, and I've tried every one, I know exactly what. Then I'll go back. I'll be like, I gotta get something else now. But I'll check out Scotch.
Yeah.
Until then, I don't. No, it's not my thing.
Well, it's all whiskey at the end of the day.
It is. It is.
But
Scotch came first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Scotch was here before him. Scotch is bigger still, but
yeah, it's huge.
It is huge.
It doesn't mean we shouldn't enjoy some of our brethren's preference in grain whiskey.
Yeah.
So you just need to ease into the malted grain thing, Steve.
Any good American single malts out there popping out?
Malted barley, just ease in. A lot of American producers are making amazing single malt whiskeys. The first thing I could come to mind is Balcones in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Their single malt whiskey is amazing.
Well, you're going to be joining us for one of the best in the country, and that is the Deer Hammer tasting in early August. You'll be with us on that one. And Lenny from Deer Hammer, he's really a single malt guy. And I like what he does. I like his stuff.
Listen, the single malt category in the United States is huge, and we should all support it. It's amazing. The grain that's coming out of the United States is so much different than what comes out of Scotland. So support it and have fun with it.
Right. Hey, Steve, in your area, I would look for some of the Cedar Ridge single malts. They're very, very good.
Cedar Ridge, okay.
Yeah, Cedar Ridge
out of Iowa.
Yeah, Iowa. There's a distillery in Illinois that's actually making a single malt that's peated. They go dig the peat out by the Mississippi, out towards Iowa, and they're actually getting a good peat, and they're making this peated. I've got to get my hands on some of it to try. But
that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it's up here in Illinois somewhere around.
It's by the Indiana border.
By the Indiana border, up by Valparaiso or something. Somewhere.
All right. So get my sister who lives in Lafayette up. All right, I got it.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go.
I'll come up with the name of the place. I just can't remember. I think it might be in Itasca, maybe. Itasca. I don't know. I'll find out. It's supposed to be good.
Orville Redenbacher country up there. Right?
I've tried quite a few
still
630s, single malt experimentals, and those have all been pretty good.
Yeah.
I think Lenny's stellar single malts have been the ones he's barrel finished.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He had a American single malt was finished in a mead barrel.
Yeah.
That was just phenomenal. It was really good.
Yeah, he does. It's got some great stuff. I agree.
Neat category that American distillers are now embracing, luckily.
Yeah. Very good. Well, Lia, thank you so much. Great event. Really appreciate it. Let's hear it for Lia and the great job that you did here tonight.
Thank you.
Brought it again.
Thank you all of you. So nice to meet you guys.
Yes. We got to come up with some more and get you on the calendar. So right now we're
many more ideas.
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah.
With that, we'll say goodbye to the audience. I'll stick around for a little bit if anybody wants to just chit chat for a little bit. Lia, I don't know if you can go. I got to go or not, but we'll say goodbye and I'll stick around here.
This guy's such a pleasure.
All right. Thank you.